Welcome to the session on communication skills for BScIT students. It is a 2-credit course with a theory paper of 75 marks and internal assessment of 25 marks. There are 5 units to this paper, and in the question paper, equal weightage is given to each of the units with 5 questions from each unit appearing in the paper. Students can choose any 3 of the 5 questions. So they end up writing 15 questions in totality, each question of 5 marks. So it is 15 into 5 equals to 75 marks. 25 marks can be drawn from their classwork, which is classwork, the kind of classwork they do, their attendance, their midterm tests and such like. Coming to the topic, we are beginning with Unit 1, which includes 2 major topics. First is the 7 C's of communication, and the second is understanding business communication. Let us begin with 7 C's of communication. We are all aware of the fact that communication is the lifeline of any relationship, any business organization, in any part of your life. It all depends upon what is the need that is expected from the speaker by the listener. And the speaker, on his part, is creating the communication so that it is effective both in content as well as in manner. So therefore, we come to how to go about making it a perfect and effective piece of communication. So we deal with the 7 C's of communication as written on the board. The first one is completeness. The word completeness refers to something which is complete in totality, complete in meaning, which answers all the possible questions. It provides all the necessary information, and it also gives something in excess if desirable. Take for example, there is a man who writes a mail to you saying, "Sir, I would like to visit your shop. Could you please tell me where I can find your shop in Navi Mumbai area?" Your reply will give him all the information, telling him about what is available in your shop, where the shops are located or where there are branches. You could, as an additional piece, also give him a road map to the place where he is closest, which would be closest for him to reach. In this way, your message is complete even beyond his expectation. This is the meaning of being complete. The second C of communication is correctness. Correct. It is very, very necessary to be correct, because you obviously cannot be saying something which is incorrect or wrong. So therefore, the language has to be correct. You have to be speaking the right kind of language. If it is a formal occasion, you obviously cannot be using very casual or language or something which is a slang. It has to be the perfect language. More so, it also has to be a language that is understood by the person in front of you. Secondly, facts. The facts that you give need to be absolutely correct. You cannot be giving wrong facts, because that could be misleading, and it could even lead to legal cases if the facts are not presented correctly. And also, one has to use the proper mechanics of writing. Take for example, formal writing and informal writing. There is something called as formal. So therefore, in case you're writing a letter, you have to see to it that you're following the correct methodology, like a left-aligned letter, which has got the date in its correct place, the to address in the correct place, the subject line, the person to be addressed, the body, the signature, the thank you, and the enclosure all in place. So this is what is called as the correct mechanics of writing. The third C that we have is clarity. Your words have to convey the clear meaning. It should not be ambiguous, it should not mislead, it should not say something different from what you really mean. So the best thing would firstly be to use familiar words. People should be able to understand you. They should not have to run to the dictionary in order to understand what you're saying. Simple, clear, short sentences leads to clarity in writing. The punctuation has to be proper. If the punctuation is incorrect, there is a chance that you can get the meaning completely wrong. I will give you a small example here. Notice this go slow, work in progress is written without any punctuation. Now I put in a full stop after slow. So it means go slow, work in progress. The meaning states that since work is in progress, go slow. Now if I were to remove this punctuation from after slow and put it after go, notice how the meaning changes. It means go. Slow work in progress. It is telling you that since the work happening is very slow, you might as well go. So this is how punctuation can play with the clarity of one's speech. And another thing that makes for clarity is effective paragraphs. When you're writing something, please see to it that one idea has to be fitted into one paragraph only. The next thought or the next idea can be in a new paragraph. One could even use bullet points in order to show the clarity. Any reading, when it is cluttered without any paragraphing, it does not allow a breathing space for the eye, and therefore it even leads to disinterest in reading or confusion in reading. Therefore, paragraphs are a very integral and important part of effective writing skills. The fourth point that we have of the 7 C's is conciseness. Conciseness refers to brevity. A teacher has the license to repeat themselves again and again. Say it all over again because a teacher reaches out to different IQ levels. However, people in organizations have very little time. Therefore, one has to always use the mechanics of brevity, cutting short wordy sentences into short pithy sentences with clear meaning. So therefore, while becoming concise, one cannot do away with clarity. Clarity is very important, but conciseness is equally important. So the first point you would do is to remove all wordy expressions, include only relevant material and not use irrelevant material. In case you want to say something additional, you could always put a star mark over there and write the details later on, so it becomes optional for a person to read if they want to, and it is not compulsory. And again, avoid repetition. Repetition can cause irritation in reading as well, and it can completely throw away the reader's mind into a different gear altogether. So therefore, the 3 things to be for conciseness are elimination of wordy expressions, including only relevant material, and avoiding repetition. The next C that we have is courtesy. It's very important to be polite. In life, politeness and humility can derive and get you what you really want, and it can make you reach your goal much faster. So, it is very important for every person to remain courteous. Now you may be wondering, how does one be courteous even while writing? Your language is courteous, you're polite, you're using words like please, kind, kindly do this, please do this for me. I would be grateful if you did it, I would be obliged if you did it. So these are kind words. Also, it becomes very important that you are replying to people on time. You get a mail on your mailbox, you open it and read it, and you say, I will reply to it later. It remains open and you forget to reply to it. That is being discourteous, because the person on the other end is going to keep waiting for your mail, and it is not showing him any courtesy at all. Always be appreciative, thoughtful, and use kind words. Use words that show a lot of respect and not disregard, and refuse completely to use discriminatory words which can hit maybe a gender or a religion or anything that can create a strife between the person who is reading it and the person who has written it. So therefore, once again, courtesy means being prompt, being appreciative, using words of respect, and never using discriminatory expressions. The next C is concreteness. By concreteness, we mean something which is solid, visible, imaginative. So therefore, one has to be vivid in an explanation. So the use of the correct adjective leads to being concrete. Always, while being concrete, use specific facts and figures. Use the active verbs rather than passive verbs. It is easier to say, do this work at the earliest, rather than saying, it should be done at the earliest. When you say, it should be done, you don't know who is being told. And so therefore, you could even be passing the work around to various people. And that is not the right thing. So therefore, always use an active verb rather than a passive verb, because it has more energy and it has direct focus. And always use image building words, that word which creates in the mind an image which makes it very clear. The last C of the communication, the 7 C's of communication, is consideration. Consideration and courtesy are in some way related. Courtesy also means being polite. Consideration also means being thoughtful. But what makes consideration very unique is the you attitude. Now when I say you attitude, I mean Y-O-U. I remember seeing a hoarding of an advertisement for a bank which says, I am not the only customer, but the bank makes me feel so. It's a clear indication of you attitude. The bank is so courteous and so considerate that every customer feels privileged. This is the meaning of you attitude. In you attitude, you put the you before the I, you put the you before the we. So therefore, you are making the person in front of you feel more important, and therefore they will maybe this kind of a communication where the you is more prominent will be more effective. One has to understand that being considerate also means being sympathetic, having a human touch. Even saying greetings of the day or warm greetings of this festive season as a starting line is showing a you attitude. Understanding nature of the person writing is very important for consideration. Always try to put yourself in the place of the reader. Focus on the you instead of the I and the we. So, on a recap, Once again, the 7 C's of communication include all adjectives beginning with the alphabet C. Becomes very easy for you to remember that the first one means completeness, correctness, clarity, conciseness, courtesy, concreteness, and consideration. With these elements, any communication is bound to be effective. We move on to the next part of our lecture of Unit 1, which, as I mentioned to you earlier, is understanding business communication. We are learning communication in order to be good communicators not only in our personal life but also in our professional life. The American Management Association defines communication as a behavior that results in exchange of meaning. So therefore, it is very clearly indicating that all communication has to at the end be meaningful. When it is meaningful, it is understood and there is a reciprocation, and therefore it becomes a dynamic two-way process for communication to continue. Now, what is the nature of communication? We have to believe one thing, that communication exists everywhere, whether it is animals, birds, or human beings. Everybody at every point of time is always communicating. No option but to communicate. If you are hungry, you communicate. A child who has no words is able to communicate hunger, pain, sleep, all through a cry. And the mother is thoughtful enough to understand each and every cry as a different need. Communication contributes to the success and failure of every human activity. You could be talking yourself into success, you could be keeping silent and therefore leading yourself into failure, or you could be talking yourself too much and falling into trouble. So therefore, both success and failure depends upon the way you communicate. You have to remember the third point, and that is, in every organization, communication is very, very important. Every organization has different departments, it will have different objectives, and there would be interrelationship between each department, and this interrelationship is grown only through communication. It could be written communication, it could be oral communication, it could be non-verbal communication. However, communication remains a constant figure. Communication is the biggest link to the external world. Imagine, today's business houses are flourishing because they are able to communicate with each other through various means of media. And as an individual, you are responsible for your success, and you are also responsible for your failure only due to your communication. The next thing that you have to know is the need and importance of communication. In any organization, there is an internal communication and there is an external communication. Internal communication is where different departments share a common goal because they have the growth of the organization in mind. So each department will be interlinked with each other because of communication. It integrates all the managerial functions together. Internal functions could be something like vision, mission, goal. When you enter any organization, notice you will see placards telling you what is the vision of the organization. What's their vision for the future? How do they want to grow? And what is their mission? What do they want to establish? And what is the goal? What is the path they will take in order to achieve their vision and mission? Internal communication is also existing in brainstorming. Take for example, a certain idea has to be implemented. There are 5 people sitting across with 5 different viewpoints. They all brainstorm together, communicating with one another and proving how these ideas can be joined together in order to bring in the best result. Communication as an internal function is there in interpersonal relationship. When cordiality and friendliness is there between departments, work happens smoothly. But when there is no cordiality, when there is difference of opinion, the path could be a little difficult. But however, it can be solved by proper communication, by proper internal communication. Internal functions also include communication while recruiting people, because when you recruit, you need to speak to people to understand what is their stance, what kind of delivery will they be able to provide for the organization. It is required for training, it is required for appraising, it is required for leading and also for controlling. So these are all the internal functions of communication. Once again, vision, mission, goal, brainstorming, interpersonal relationships, recruiting, training, appraising, leading and controlling. It has some external functions. The external functions are communicating with members of public at large outside the organization. They could be the stakeholders, shareholders, investors, customers, clients, dealers, vendors, etc. You are constantly communicating with people outside. You're talking to lawyers in order to know what you're doing is right or wrong. You're talking to government people, you're talking to bankers, you're talking to people who lend you money, you're talking to people who buy stakes in your organization. So therefore, any kind of dealing with all these people who exist outside the organization but have their stakes within the organization, that kind of a communication is called as an external function of organizational communication. Now we come to the part which is very interesting, and it is called as the process of communication. Because any communication always takes place within a frame of reference, which means there is a reason for a communication. So let us see how diagrammatically that can be represented. Any message will always have a sender. The sender will be sending a message to the receiver. Now the sender sends the receiver a message through a medium, which could be verbal, non-verbal, audio or visual. Now the other functions which are very important here is the sender encodes. The meaning of the word encode is an internal communication that happens in the mind of the sender to decide upon what will be the right kind of medium he will use. Like take for example, when I am taking this class today, I am deciding that I am not only going to use my words, but I am also going to use the board. So I am using some words on the board, I am using a diagram. So therefore I am using visual as well as verbal communication in order to communicate with you today. So my encoding is, in this way I will be able to make clarity to my receiver. So I use the medium of verbal as well as visual to pass it on to the receiver. That's you. Now on your part, what do? You understand what I am saying, and understanding means decoding. So you decode it. You understand what I am trying to say, what is in my mind, but you are using your own reference of framework. And from there on, what you do is, once again, you encode as to how you are going to give a reply back. And the reply once again comes back to the sender, who then decodes what you have to say. So therefore, the process keeps going. And that is why it is called as a dynamic process, ever growing. And the most important feature of this is the feedback. Without a feedback, any communication is stagnant. It doesn't move. Even if you were to simply nod and say yes, you are moving it forward, which means you have understood. You have the right to say. So your expression is saying, sorry, I didn't understand you. So the sender will once again send you the message so that you can understand it. So some kind of communication feedback is what makes the entire process dynamic. I could give you an example of a salesman. A salesman, when he's selling his ware, he decides, he encodes, that a face-to-face communication with a person will be a much better way of selling a product, rather than sending him an emailer, because he may look at the emailer, he may not look at the emailer, but he definitely will look at me when I go there with my product. So here is a salesman with his product in front of a customer. The customer has no option but to listen to the salesman. The salesman is there with his product, giving all the possible benefits. And if he is convincing enough, he is able to make a relationship with the customer who wants to buy the product or know more about the product so that he could buy it in future. So this is how the dynamic cycle of communication can be shown through a simple example. We move on to the next part, and that is non-verbal communication. Because I just now spoke to you about verbal communication. I'm sure all of you can make out what is audio, which means voice, voiceover, recording, a recorded piece, a music, anything could be. Passing on information. Visual is that which you are able to see with your eyes. It could be a movie, a hoarding, a poster, a color, or anything at all. Non-verbal is a big part of it, because they say non-verbal communication is the most difficult to understand because it has no words. It has only action. It has only parts of the body that is playing, and therefore we will have to focus a separate part of our study to understanding what is non-verbal communication.